Hey everybody, welcome back to the weekly DEC, where alongside Damola Omatosho and Elroy Ashton, I'm Corey Frazier. And bunch of friends getting together, young men getting together, talking about our challenges, our successes, encouraging each other, affirming each other, and making sure that we're going to be able to be successful, and then hopefully translate that success into other good impact within the world. And that's our goal, and that's what we want to do. So, fellas, how y'all doing today? Don't everybody talk at once.
Well, so it's funny because from a timing standpoint, I wait to see if Elroy is going to say something because the thing you don't want is for you to both say something at the same time. But at the same time, like Elroy went first last time, so I'm going to go first this time,
Yes.
Elroy. We're going to put you on hold. But man, things are going well. Overall, still figuring out some things, getting ready to at least move out of the current home. So by this time next week, or actually maybe next week, I may not be able to join our session just because I'll probably be in the process of moving.
Hmm.
So looking forward to that. Had some really great conversations at work. Uh, just supporting my leadership chain and supporting that management structure because they're trying to make some changes, and change is hard for people within the team, especially when we're trying to kind of do this kind of startup like culture. So just supporting my team and supporting people, I think people are appreciating that and noticing that. And then overall, right, just trying to figure out once again the how to get that escape velocity, right? Like day jobbing is nice and it pays the bills, but trying to figure out how to dedicate more time to the things I'm passionate about, things I truly enjoy or feel I enjoy doing. So that's it on this end, man. Overall positive, good vibes. Got my first vaccine shot, looking forward to getting the second one, go out and get vaccinated, y'all. So that's it on this end.
Nice, nice, man. And I got mines a- about 2 weeks ago, so I'm super excited to get the next one. And we're definitely gonna come out of this. So this week was pretty good for me. One of the things that I really appreciated was really sitting down at work, having an honest conversation with my management, right? Because I think one of the things is that you want to be able to feel like you can trust people, especially because a lot of us spend our time at work. And one of the questions my manager asked me was, "Am I happy?" Right? Am I happy? And for me, because we have a relationship that existed prior to me working for him or working under him, I was able to be honest, professionally honest, right? Sometimes you just can't be off the cuff like, yo, or yeah. So for me, I really made sure that I was prepared for that conversation or that question because I knew it was going to come and I knew I wanted to tee it up because I think you have to understand where you want to go, right? And for me, I kind of have a clear picture of where I want to do and where I want to go, and he was able to understand that. Again, there's always needs outside of yourself when you work for someone else, so you have to be really really flexible for whatever those roles or responsibilities are that you have to do. But it was great just having that conversation to end my week with someone that is responsible for the work that I do, and of course I'm responsible for my own work. But yeah, it was a great week so far, man. And the progress that I'm seeing here at home personally with my bathroom remodel is fantastic. So I'm hoping with the next 2 weeks or so, I'm actually using it. So yeah, it was good.
Good man. I'm glad to hear that. With you both talked about the vaccine stuff, I've also been vaccinated, so we're good there. But this sounds like it's going to be an opportunity for us to get back together, play some Smash Brothers, and play. So I'm looking forward to that. That's actually going to be good for me, man. Um,
Wait, 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 wait. I got one thing. My
okay.
brother let me use his Switch for a little bit. So I have his Nintendo Switch, with me, which is pretty awesome. Because I've been hesitant to buy one because it's been out for 4 years, but it's definitely added something to my life and giving me the opportunity to step away and just do something that I really enjoy. So that was one of the things that I forgot. Sorry, Corey, go ahead.
No, you're good, man. You're good. I'm sitting here still trying to figure out this audio. That's what it is. We're gonna get it straightened out, but nah, man. This week, pretty chill week. Good YouTube week from a performance standpoint. Um, you know, it- Nothing spectacular, I think, really happened this week. It's just continuing to make progress on things. And moving forward, being consistent with my working out again, getting that going. So that's been great. Um, you know, uh, yeah, I'm just having a decent week, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. Which honestly, with that said, it's probably a good segue. We should probably just jump right into that, right? Damola last week, had a really good thought, which is you know talking about fear and where we're operating from, where our goals and our objectives. Last week we did the quarterly, or a couple of weeks ago rather, we did the quarterly, right? And that sense of, are we really reaching the way we need to? And we really operating the spaces we need to, or are we operating from a place of fear and restricting ourselves and limiting our potential in some way? So I think this would be a really good, really amazing, vulnerable conversation to have, right? How are we operating? How are we doing? What fears do we have? What worries do we have? And Damola, appreciate you bringing this topic to us. And yeah, go ahead and get us kicked off.
Yeah, no, Corey, you said it well. This came up in our conversation last week, and we were sharing our updates, our wins, some of our failures this past quarter. And as I was kind of hearing and listening to all of us kind of speak, one thing became clear to me is we all have fears, and fear is a natural emotion. It's a healthy emotion. It's actually what allows us to stay safe, right? And it exists for a reason. At the same time, I think it has the potential to also be a double-edged sword, right? And keep us from, taking chances and really taking risk out of fear. So this conversation is really centered around that question of, what are you afraid of, right? I mean, it's a powerful question to ask. And for anyone, there's going to be a range of fears across different avenues in life and different things. But I wanted to bring that to us and really kind of put that to the team, right? Asking ourselves, are we operating from a from a place of fear? And what are the things that we worry about? What are the things that either keep us up at night, or maybe get us to wake up early? And really, along that same line, what's the worst that can happen, or that you sometimes think can happen, right? So it's a lot of questions, right? And I want to kind of explore each one in a little bit more depth. One of the things I jotted down under that was, for myself, the word failure. So, to make sure that we're all as vulnerable and as open as we care to be for the internets, I want to kick it off by saying perhaps my greatest fear is that of failure. And what's interesting about failure as a fear is that there's so many ways to fail, right? You could fail at your job, you could fail at your startup, your business, you could fail at your relationship, you can fail at task as simple as getting your YouTube videos uploaded on a weekly basis. And different failures have different consequences and levels of impact. But one of the things that Elroy kind of brought up, or I had mentioned when it came to me, was that, you know, I have failed a lot, and not in a bad way, right? But in a good way, right? And that really kind of changes my perception of what failure means and how it feels and what it looks like to fail. But I want to talk about one type of failure that I'm particularly um, worried about, right? And this is one that actually has followed me for as long as I can remember, really since I was in, I would say, undergrad, right? When I went from high school into college and had the opportunity to really kind of make life changing, altering decisions. So, a little bit of background: when I was in college or high school, I was an athlete, also a pretty good student, took a lot of advanced courses, that kind of thing. But I didn't really know at that time what I wanted to do. And when I was getting ready to go off to college, I told myself that, hey, I'm going to be a lawyer. So I'm going to be a political science major. And when I signed up for that classes, and before you actually take the courses you need to take, there's an advisor who will sit down with you and will kind of take a look at your high school background and then try to see if it's a good fit. Just kind of an advisor, right? Counselor of sorts. And she was kind of taking a look at my background, and she was looking, and she was like, you only have algebra 2. Because I started to have doubts, right, about what I wanted to major in when I got there, and whether law and political science was really what I wanted to do, because I spent so much time working on and with computers. And when I told this to the advisor, she said, hey, people that come to our college university tend to have at least calculus under their belt. You're saying you want to potentially do engineering and you've never even taken a pre-calculus course. And she kind of, challenged me, and she said, are you sure you can do it, or are you sure that's what you want to do? And for me, this was a great opportunity for fear to rear its face, right? So, I had already had a disadvantage of not having, say, the skill set, right, that the students that came in there would have, and the person who was going advising me was advising me at least what seemed to be in my best interest, right, to keep me from potential failure, right, by saying, hey, is this what you want to do? But it was ultimately up to me to make the decision of whether I was going to try to pursue this path of a computer engineer, or just stick the path that I had chosen as a political science major. And fortunate for me, looking back on that incident 15 years ago, I made the decision to become an engineer. And it was not easy. All right. I struggled. I got some C's, got a couple D's here and there, but some way somehow managed to pass, and not only start off a year behind, but graduate on time with a bachelor's in computer engineering before I would ultimately go on to get my master's in computer science from an Ivy League university. And a lot of that came, and we're not even talking about the success that came after that, from the job opportunities and the opportunities that we have today as a result of facing that fear. But for me, fear of failure in academic regards, in career regards, has been a overarching theme. It's so much so that I work really long, really hard. And when I think about it, and I think about my colleagues and some of the things that they're doing, that they're not doing, right, there's a question in my mind of whether they have that same fear that I have. Are they fearful of being perceived as not competent? Are they fearful of being perceived as representing their race, right? If I mess up, will they think twice about the next black guy that they hire, right,
Mhm.
or a black
Mhm.
person that they hire in this role? Those are the kind of fears that I go into some of my engagements, some of my roles with, right? This fear of failing, or being perceived as failing, because that's the other thing, is perception is another fear of mine that is coupled with that fear of failure, right? So, I wanted to kick off our conversations and throw that one out there for you all to either digest, or even pick apart, or even discuss, because when I throw out the fear of failure, just knowing you all and knowing how similar we are, there's something that tells me that one's not too far from your core set of fears. So that's my initial kind of kind of big fear, right? This fear of failure. And like I said, we can definitely go into it in different details for different areas of life. But I wanted to start out with this one of really just failing academically, failing in my career, and then really having to represent not only myself, but a race of people, right? Because we don't really get to spin our narrative half the time, right? And for me, that fear has driven me to the point where I, work probably more than my colleagues and other people who are in similar roles. So, what are your thoughts on that? And maybe, just give us maybe some of your anecdotal stories as well.
So just for me, real quick, Jamal, I'm thinking, because you're actually a very successful guy, and but you always say, people who succeed a lot, failed a lot probably as well. And my question or my thought is, how do you deal with success? Like, we have, you have the fear of failure, but I'm curious, how do you deal with success, right? And how's your thought process go? What's your
I
behavior
love that
pattern?
question.
Because if you have this fear of failure and you've had all these challenges, but you're a pretty successful guy, I'm wondering how you process that success, and how does it, to put it in a blunt question, how come it doesn't reinforce you enough to be like you're fearless now, right?
I got you. I got you. Well, that's a very interesting question, and I actually love that you ask that, because they go hand in hand. Fear and failure, they go hand in hand. And for me, this is where it gets very interesting, because if you talk to my friends and family, people who know me very well, they're going to tell you that I'm extremely hard on myself, like, or I can be tougher on myself. I need to cut myself a break. And it's funny because you asked about the success. While I recognize that I'm successful and that I've had so many successes, so many wins, the thing that happens when you have this kind of like fear of failure mindset is that you almost don't even see your success as success, right? You kind of look at it like, well, that is the bare minimum, or that was what I was supposed to do. So you get into this really kind of like bad mindset of not really or recognizing successes for what they are. I mean, let me give you a great example. So Cardcraft, which is my greeting card app and business, we did about 25K in revenue over the course of this last year, which, if you look at the statistics and the numbers of it, a lot of businesses don't do that for several years. Yet I'm not satisfied and I'm not happy, right? Because it's not this rocket ship, and it's not, a easily reproducible scenario. So I love that question because it really kind of shows how fear and the failure, or the fear of failure, right, can pollute what success means and what success looks like, right? And for me, it's one of those things where it's a very hard mindset to get out of, right? And I know this for a fact because I don't even know anything else. In the movie 300, right? They say, "What's your profession?" For me, it's just this fight. It's this right? Like, this is what I do, right? So I love that question because my success is maybe apparent to others on the outside sometimes, but it's not sometimes always so apparent to me, if that makes any sense. So thank you for asking that. And yeah, thank you for reinforcing me. And I need to hear that, right? That, you, who I respect, right, and who I also look up to as very successful, and someone I aspire to be, in certain aspects of my life, right? um, you hold me in high regard, and that means a lot. So I appreciate that, Corey.
Yeah, man. That's true. Thank you. I appreciate you for holding me in high regard. I'm trying to be like you two when I grow up.
So I got a comment in regards to that. One of the things for me is that I've heard a story about a dad asking his kid every week, "What did they fail at this week?" And I think when I heard that, I was like, "Wow, that's deep," because it allows for that kid to know that confronting failure isn't something that it shouldn't be hard to talk about, right? And I look at that and I'm just like, "Wow, I need to do that for myself, and even for future generations of kids or my cousins or my family members, because yeah, there's no success without some levels of failure, like you said." And I think the moment we've seen, or I've seen a lot of your journey, right, from the different businesses and the things that you've done, and it's inspiring. It's definitely
Yeah,
inspiring, man, because
yeah.
you've held it together and you've decided to do it on your own now, right? Create your own thing versus just continuously partner with others primarily. So you've been able to
Mhm.
compile those things and create success. 25K may seem like a lot or a little bit to people at different spectrums, but it's really a testament of the hard work that you've put in and the failures that that hadn't dissuaded you, right? Because I think the thing I always
Yeah.
talk about is you could be disappointed but not deterred, right? I think I keep saying that stuff, and for me, I try to ground myself with it because I struggle with the same thing, right? The fear of failure. I struggle with it, right? Because the on top of the fear of failure for me is the fear of time. The fear of time, man, because I've recognized that, I'm no longer 20, 21. Time is just going, whatever, right? Like now I have such a very like sensitivity to it, in which how I govern myself and try to make myself as successful as possible with the time that I have, whether it's the use of Todoist, the app that I use, which I love, but then I even built a tool on top of it. So my software engineering side came out, and I think I've shown to both of you it, to really understand my use of time so that I could potentially be more successful and not fail or not overcommit myself or just not be able to deliver to the expectations that I have from me. Okay, because I think that setting expectation high for ourselves, we're our worst critic, right? We are definitely looking at ourselves in the
Mm,
mirror,
mm,
sleeping with ourselves in our own minds, without the external stimuli, and even with the external
yeah.
stimuli that we get from the world, it's crushing, right? Because there's so much FOMO, all these things. So
Mhm.
definitely, man, like we have to be able to confront the failure or ask ourselves proactively, what did we fail at? Right. And be comfortable with that because yeah, it's gonna be part of the journey. And even though I struggle with it every single day, I think what helps me in terms of failure is building processes. Right. I build processes and I'm the type of guy that I'm very uncomfortable with the unknown. And I appreciate at work, again, some people don't have great relationships with their managers, stuff like that, but those relationships matter because you want someone who can recognize your shortcomings and push you, challenge you, right? And sometimes things will break or you snap, right? Because you're like, yo, this is outside of my place. But really
Mhm.
figuring out, how can you really own the failures and recognize the failures are learning points because the failures don't define you, let the journey define you, right? And I think that's the key, and it's a learning process. You don't figure it out all at once. So that's my
Mhm.
2 cents there.
I love that, and I jotted down fear of time.
Hmm.
So we're definitely gonna have to revisit that topic because that's the constant, right? Time is the constant across space, dimensions, all of that.
Hmm.
This idea of it will pass, whether we how will we utilize it, right? So yeah, I wanna definitely circle back on that either in this session or in the near future session. But any thoughts on
Yeah.
what Elroy had to say, or what some of your thoughts and fears are based on what we've said so far, Corey?
Just real quick, I want to, because Elroy, you mentioned processes, and I wonder, do you build the processes because it gives you an anchor point for traceability and to know, hey, I failed here for this reason, and I could trace down that reason and fix it, or is it something else? Like, what help does process give you in helping with your
So I think
fears?
the one of the things is that process gives me somewhat of confidence, right? Because again, my
Mm,
assumption or the anchor point that I have is, someone created this because they were successful with it. That's the idea, right? And by instituting these processes, it allows me to really state, okay, this is a successful thing that can help me address my failure of the failures, right? Or something going wrong here, because then it helps to govern me within a constraint. Because I think limitations aren't a bad thing, but it allows you to use whatever you have versus
mm,
seeing and thinking you have all these different things because you end up getting what is this? You end up making no action because you're trying to figure out like all these different things that's front of you. But if you just say, okay, I got a pencil and a paper, I got a marker, I got a white, or I got a, all these other things, you're like fail just making a mistake, but you just go, right? And I think people always say just have to start and just kind of sometimes roll through it, even if you get caught up or fall. And I think one of the things that's so interesting is we think about kids, right? Kids fall all the time. Kids fall all the time when they, especially when they're starting to learn, and they don't give up on that, right? I mean, I don't, I have seen an example of a kid giving up, but definitely, I think we have to keep those things in mind. I mean, we forget those fundamental things because we have so many other problems and things in our lives, but yeah, we
hmm
gotta be able to like just sometimes stick with it and sometimes even ask for help with that because we don't know everything. And that's why the process is coming for me, addressing my fear of the failure.
Yeah, that was really good. I jotted down another topic point, asking for help. I have a really interesting story or conversation to have about that one. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah. That was really good. And I guess just to round out the whole fear of failure thing, and now maybe I launched into some of my own fears. Um, for me, the fear of failure is because, and maybe you all have experienced this. I know Damola, we've chatted a few times offline, and we keep really joking about how similar we are, in terms of our concerns. But for me, failure is hard, right? It's
Mhm.
one, like probably both of you, it wasn't something I got conditioned to early on in life because you are naturally talented, naturally skilled, right? Your talent alone and your tenacity and your brains and smarts and all good stuff just carried you forward, right? Even if you put in effort or didn't, you were just naturally really good at stuff for the most part. Obviously, you weren't perfect, but you're just naturally good. Um, but somewhere along the line, it felt like when I did fail, there was a lower tolerance level for me failing versus other people. And I don't know if you both have felt like that or do feel like that in life, but it's almost like you see other people failing left and right, friends, colleagues, and it's like, dust themselves off, they're good. But you fail, it's like it's almost like you fell off a pedestal to people. And I think that has kind of um added to the fear of failure, which is this sense of, wow, for everyone else, when they fall, they come down a rung or a step, or they fall a short distance. When I fail, it feels like I just jumped off like a tall building, right? Kind of feeling. Um, and so to me, it's that sense of balancing expectations, and then like there's also that sense of a lot of what you've done and what you do, you tie a lot of your value into, or maybe you may have grown up that way and now you're trying to break out of some of those habits as you're older now, realizing that that's not a healthy way to live life. So for me, that's where my fear of failure comes from. And honestly, it ties into another fear that I have, to be hmm, more specific instead of broadly speaking of fear of failure. I think I've uncovered, I've have a from therapy and coaching and things like that over the past really 8+ years, right? That I have a fear of providing value or not providing value to people. So if I don't feel like I'm providing value, if I'm not doing something for someone or being as great as I could be, or whatever the case may be, then that person won't love me. That person won't care for me, or their love and their care will be very temporary and easily broken. If I'm not adding the right value at work, providing this outcome, that outcome, this measurable thing, my manager may not value me, and then I'm gonna get let go or get a bad performance review, not get a good merit increase, stock, whatever it is, right? So, um, while I'm I guess what I'm trying to say is that's one thing I've had to kind of realize is that, sorry, for some reason I'm not breathing while I'm talking. That's weird.
Man, no, you're
but
good. You're
but
good, and this is also an interesting
yeah,
topic, right? Like one
yeah,
that's really causes you to think and dig deep. So yeah, you're
yeah,
good, bro.
yeah. So but it's like that feeling of, man, okay, this person sees me this way. There was a movie I just watched, Malcolm and Marie, right? And there's a part where John David Washington's character tells Zendaya, right? He says, you can't believe that someone just loves you just to love you, right? Without there being a specific reason why they do. And for me, that's been a hard thing because, one, that hasn't necessarily been my experience. Like, I feel like going back to that whole being on a pedestal thing, the moment you screw up or the moment you've screwed up enough small times, it's a huge fall from grace, right? That tolerance level, oops, that tolerance level isn't wide like it is for everybody. It feels like it's very, very thin, like this. And so it's like, okay, I got to keep adding value. I got to keep demonstrating who I am, or else what did Janet Jackson say? What have you done for me lately? Kind of thing, kind of feeling, right? And so it's like, okay, I got to keep demonstrating this value, or else I'm not gonna be loved. At work, it's like, yeah, I did all these great things. Like, you look on my wall, all these great things, right? What's it amount to? Right? It feels like people will tell you, man, that's great. You worked on the space shuttle, blah, blah, blah. Elroy and I were sitting at USA, United Space Alliance, doing our thing, putting people in space. And at the end of the day, it's like, what did that amount to? Sometimes, even though people tell you how great it is. So now it's like a fear of trust. Now it's gone from a fear of providing value to a fear of trust. This is probably the biggest fear I have right now, where you don't trust people, what they say, what they do, or you don't feel as though people are consistent and reliable. So if someone's telling me great things, I can't I can't count on the fact that that person, what they're telling me, really, really is true. To Damola's point about success and whether or not the successes really are helping you, whether or not the successes are staying reinforced in your mind. And for me, it's like, whoa, when someone tells me something nice or I do something good, I feel like I can't count on that. I don't trust it because that in the past has shown that Doesn't matter what that success is, what that belief is, that good outcome, that good feeling is. It takes this much for it to end, but I can be doing this much, and all it takes is that, right? So now I have a fear of trust of people, especially my relationships right now, right? Where it's like, I can't count on that, because if I do, then it could lead to me failing or having
Mhm.
emotional trauma or maybe financial issues, right? Because now I got these financial goals, right? I'm gonna boom, boom, boom. I'm gonna hit 500,000 my personal, you know, brokerage account in 5 years, 1.5 million in 10. I'm gonna own 10 million in real estate or whatever, 10 properties, 5 million in real estate, whatever it is, right? In the next 5 to 10 years. And it's gonna be able to give me passive income. What if I meet the wrong partner? What if she doesn't believe the things I believe? What if she goes through all these things where, it's reinforcing the wrong things to me and I miss out on these goals because I'm too busy hurt or traumatized or devastated or whatever it is. So now I don't trust, right? And it's just, it's a lot. I don't think people realize that as men, we deal with stuff like this a lot, right? A lot of this trust, a lot of this sense of failure, this sense of expectation that we had tried to keep up, and that if we voice it, often it's a sign of weakness.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I don't think the culture is truly caught up to men being that vulnerable yet, even though it's encouraged. And so we're often stuck, to Demola's point, of kind of keeping a lot of this stuff to ourselves, right? And trying to figure out how to push through it, right? And push on. So I'll pause there and see if you two have any thoughts.
Wow, that was first of all well said, and I'm gonna let Elroy speak his mind before I jot down or talk about what I jotted down. But yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, man, Corey, thank you for sharing that. I'm being vulnerable. Here's the thing I'm gonna tell you, right? Especially when it comes to trusting people, you can have two philosophies, right? No trust until and they gotta build it, or you have some trust and then they lose it, right? And you talked about having a partner or just a significant other and stuff like that. It doesn't get easy, right? Because you're dealing with someone else with different personality, different life experiences that bring something that you haven't been exposed to prior to you. And disappointment happens, but you get to choose that partner, right? Do not feel like, unless you're in a situation where you arrange marriage, but you get those choices. So I think for me, as you grow and as you continue to date or experience the world with other people in it, don't feel like you have to make a choice out of desperation, right? Because that could definitely lead you. And don't even, here's the thing that I always say for myself is that I don't try to make other people's lives complicated, and I don't want someone else to make my life complicated. And I make sure to communicate that, right? Because your needs matter, right? Your desires matter. So always remember that for yourself, you have to ground yourself and know what you want versus just saying, okay, no one may love me. You love yourself, right? Start with that, right? You want a family, you want all these, like, make that list on what, and I think you have, right? That whoever comes next, you can determine whether or not they're meeting those standards that you have. And if they're not, there's an opportunity to move on. It always takes a bigger person to end a relationship or to not pursue something with someone else, right? But it's hard. So don't be like afraid to do those things, right? And at the same time, there's nothing wrong with your situation of not trusting in the beginning and having them have to build that trust. But sometimes you might have to flip that, right? In terms of trusting and then seeing if they disappoint you, but making sure that you communicate, because communication is super important, right? Very. And again, there's a lot of people too that exist that say, I live my life, you got to conform to me, blah, blah, and they don't know the word compromise. Compromise also exists. So there's a lot of levers that you have to tweak, turn, and be aware of because there's no like perfect partner or someone who's going to be identical to you. I mean, some people find really great matches, but just be aware, man, that sometimes it takes time. Sometimes you have to flip, what you're looking for from another partner, or just to avoid just ending up in the same spaces that you're in.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good point, and maybe even to you know uh, broaden it, beyond partnership into career, job, and what people just expect from you. Like, and this is not anything bad towards my aunt, but I remember my aunt, telling me, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I know it's a biblical quote, and I can never remember what the actual scripture quote is from.
Hmm.
And I'm sure someone is like often going, God dang it, Corey, you should know that. But like there's also that sense of, wow, people see a lot in you, like whether it's my boss or whether or not it's other people in the community or whatever. And I always have to wonder, am I living up to expectation, right? And then like I'm thinking, like, man, I'm doing YouTube stuff with gaming and other things and some other things we'll be branching out into, including this very show, right? But it's like, is that what people think I should be doing? Like, is there a judgment? Is people are going to say something? But to your point, Elroy, with all this trust, it and bringing it back to fear, it often makes you think of depending on yourself, right? And I remember I was listening, I was working out, and Bobby Brown, On Our Own from Ghostbusters 2 came on, right? And he's like, you want something done, you got to do it yourself. And that's like a cool mindset people, typically have, like, yeah, I'm tough, I'm do it myself, right? But that's not how you go far. And when you have that lack of trust, you start wanting to internalize and isolate and come inside here and put everything on your own shoulders. And I've noticed that in little subtle ways, like something fun, right? I used to want like super cool superpowers, like reality manipulation or invulnerability or something like that, right? And now the superpower I want is absolute existence, being whole unto myself, right? As in, you don't need anything. You're not going to care anymore. Like nothing matters anymore. You are simply you, and that's it. And there's only you. You exist in a universe of you, even though you can be in this universe. You are your own physics, your own universe, your own being, your own construct, right? Outside of everything. You are solely dependent upon you, right? Kind of thing. And you are solely you. And so it's interesting, just that sense of, whoa, even my mentality is shifting more to how do I depend on myself? Like all those financial goals, all that stuff is just like, I can achieve all that and make sure my life is just like, boom, perfect, right? And hopefully it's better with a partner, but it's almost like, I've started to adopt this mentality of coalescing everything into this, man, I keep hitting that stuff, coalescing everything into like this ball of oneness. And I wonder if that's not, I mean, in some ways it could be healthy, I guess. um in other ways I wonder if it's a fear that I'm escaping from, right? Sorry, Damola, sorry, you were gonna say
No, no, this is good. So this is really good for many reasons. And once again, just as I've been listening, I've been taking down notes. One thing I was going to address is what's nice about what you just said is um, that's a little bit more achievable than getting the superpowers. So that's good to know, right? Because that's something that's within your control. There's a question of if that's the best way to go about living your life, right? One of the words that I've been hearing over and over again, so two really good documentaries for people to check out. Once again, not knowing how you feel about politics and stuff. There's a Hillary Clinton documentary on Hulu that I highly recommend people check out. And then there's also the Tiger Woods documentary, I think on Netflix or one of the other platforms that I really want people to check out. And what it talks about is their ability to compartmentalize, which sounds like kind of what you would be doing in an essence or in some sense, right? But I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. Like me and Bianca, one of the conversations that we have is around like my need for space. I'm very much in my head, right? And this is a trait that you find with like a lot of entrepreneurs or people who have something that they're particularly like fixated or focused on. So I need a lot of space and time to just like process and think. I need a lot of me time, and depending on your partner or who you're with, or what their needs are, that may be incompatible, right? I mean, couple that with the fact that I'm a software developer and I already spend 12 hours a day writing code. It gets to be very interesting because she'll see it as, hey, you know what, you've already spent 12 hours doing your thing, not realizing that was 12 hours doing the thing for someone else or for work, where I still probably need those other couple of hours. But what's interesting about that, one of the things that I had jotted down that I wanted to revisit, that's really funny, is having a business and running a business brings up a lot of your biggest and worst and the types of fears that you've kind of stated. You were kind of talking about the trust thing, right? And I wanted to come back to that one because I've experienced that same, you know, really kind of like question of which one is the best way to do things. Do I work to build trust amongst people or have people build it, or do I trust and see until it's lost? And it's a little bit different when you're trying to build your baby, or you're trying to raise this baby, and you're potentially hiring somebody that may or may not be on the same page. So I've experienced this, like, this failure, this that I'll be honest, that's caused some distrust, right? Because I do start from the perspective of trusting until you show me otherwise, but now it's kind of like you need to earn my trust, right? Convince me, and that could be bad. So I'm not saying an argument one way or the other, for how we learn to trust, but recognizing that trust can be a very big part of fear, right? And whether we can trust those around us, the institutions, whether we can trust our jobs to keep us employed, right? Whether we can trust our managers to have our best interests, whether we can trust our spouses to do
Mhm.
what they say they're going to do when they say they're going
Mhm.
to do it, right?
Mhm.
It's a very big thing to have a lot of fear and trepidation about. Um, I wanted to just recap the items that I jotted down because, once again, I don't think we're going to get it all out in this session, or in this, this short recording. But I wanted to revisit these in the future. The things I jotted out were asking for help, right? What does it mean to feel or be on and fall off of a pedestal, right? Are you what you do or have done, right? And then this one, this fear of not providing value, what does that mean? What does that look like? And how does that also really kind of factor into how you are perceived and how you perceive yourself, right? Um, Especially if your delivery of value is so tied up in who you are. It's really interesting because uh, when the success doesn't give you what you want or thought you wanted, right? That creates this really interesting space where, like you said, you have the accolades, you got all the things, but do you have what you want? Are you happy? Right? That becomes a question. And one of the things that I also jotted down, I think Elroy had kind of mentioned it, was the effect of partners on your dreams, goals, ambition, success. Right? Elroy, you said something that I want to revisit because of my drive for success and the things that I'm a fear, because of my fear of failure. Right? You said something along the lines of, I try not to make people's lives complicated, and I was like, damn, like, when I think about how my fear of failure has potentially complicated things for my partners, or maybe even my business stakeholders, right? That's something that I think is important to kind of talk about, because one of the conversations that came up, and that literally just happened the other day, was a conversation around why I wouldn't let my partner participate in my business, right? And there's a lot that's mixed up in there in terms of fear, trust, failure. So all really good points, and things that, as we kind of dive deeper into, are kind of like exposing conversations that I think would be helpful. I know we spend a lot of time kind of talking about finance. We talk about also like the stock market, and random topics, but there's also some really good topics here that I think we could delve into more, because they're ones that we don't get to talk about as much, or that really, if we look at all the things that we're trying to accomplish, that factor in and play a big part, right? And why we do the things we do the way that we do them. So yeah, thank you guys for once again just being super open and clear about that.
So I got two quotes that I want to say to you guys because I don't know how much longer we have, but one is by Alvin Toffler, who's a writer, right? And there's the other one is by Kobe Bryant. So Corey and Damola, you both talked about fear of not meeting others' expectations, right? And one of the things that I have here on top of my monitor is 7 quotes because I always want to remind myself I want these to be at the forefront of when I have bad days or when I'm thinking through something, I could always revisit them right here because they're in front of me. Alvin Toffler said, if you don't have a strategy, you're going to be part of someone else's strategy, right? So it starts with you. And Kobe Bryant said, it's the only thing you control. you are responsible for how people remember you or don't. You know what I mean? So you can't take it lightly. And it really starts with us trying to find that foundation and how we want to move in the world. Because again, everybody's going to have some type of expectation, perception of you. But if you know what you're doing, then you have the master plan on your side versus those small incremental moments that people may judge you on, right? And I think the judgment is feedback, but again, you don't have to take every single feedback.
I'm gonna need those quotes again so I can put them on my computer. But I'm gonna summarize it as Elroy, have a plan for your life, right? I like that a lot.
Yeah, no, that was good, Elroy. That was really good. And that's something, for sure. that We may have talked about it, off camera a bit, but that sense of no, you scope out what you want. Stop trying to fit into what other people need. You know, I mean, obviously there's compromise and doing things like that, but it's this sense of giving up your sense of self for other people's needs, and then finding yourself, to your point, Elroy, um, being not fulfilled or undefined in some particular way, right? Where now, you don't have the uh, internalized fortitude, validation. There we go. To know which way is up with you so that you are comfortable, you're confident, and you're not operating from a place of fear. So, yeah, yeah, man. All right. Anybody got anything else on this topic? This is a really good chat today.
Yeah, no, this has been good. Like I said, I jotted down a lot of notes for future topics, right? We can, revisit either, in our next episode or maybe even a future one. I think it's good to intersperse conversations like these with ones about, planning finances, real estate, strategy, that kind of thing. Because once again, it's important that when we do these sessions and when we have the weekly deck, we show people where I told this to one of my team members the other day, you're a whole person, right? Like you're a whole person, because I think she was
Yeah.
worried
Yeah.
about, meeting deadlines and hopping on a call with me. And I'm just like, look, you have a family, you have kids, you're a whole person. So yeah, I think showing that we're whole people, right, is important. And I'm looking forward to us to continue to doing that going into the future. So thank you guys for being open, willing to share with me today.
And I think that ties into the emotional intelligence, right? Because I mean, people always sit down and be like, business intelligence, we gotta, but again, we're not dealing with machines here, right? And I think that
Hmm.
empathy that you share improves the culture of your business and the output of your business and allows people to bring I hate this term, but their full selves, right? Because then they know they'll be received appropriately, not just used as a tool, regardless of whatever's going on for them, and that there's some level of flexibility here because they're not the only one, right? Because if she's not available, then someone else can be tapped, and that's okay, right? That's okay, and that's why you have a business of not just one employee but of many.
Yeah.
Mhm.
For sure. And just to close out, close this out and close out the thought that Damola shared and that you've now shared or echoed, Elroy. Um, these conversations are important because these are the kind of conversations I think people need to see, uh, men having, people having, and just in general, right? Because anyone who knows us in real life, IRL, right? Will look at us and maybe think, "Oh, you guys have your stuff together. You're successful. You're whatever. You're good guys, or you're stable people, or whatever it is. Whatever the qualifier is, right?" But like you said, Elroy, we're human beings. There is a whole bunch of things happening in the back of our heads, in the back of our spirit, whatever it is that people don't know about, or that we think about, or that we consider, that we have to work on, that we have to manage. And so conversations like this give that insight. And anyone else who's maybe starting out on this journey, or is, trying to make their way through a similar situation, is now seeing this, right? And saying, oh, okay, so these guys go through the same things. I'm not alone. And that's one of the biggest things about these conversations, about the vulnerability that we're sharing, is that when you have these issues, these challenges, these thoughts, these things you have to manage and you don't know what to do, you isolate and you think you're alone. And that's not true. Right. So that's hopefully something I hope everybody's getting out of this. So with that said, I think we've come to the end of our conversation here. thank you very much for joining us on the weekly DEC. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. I mean, very appreciative of that. You could be anywhere else in the world, and you chose to be here with us, listening to our thoughts, our insights, and we certainly hope you got something out of this today. Please do share what you've learned via the comment section, or maybe share with a loved one or a friend or a colleague who may be experiencing some of the same things regarding uh, fear, and whether or not they're operating from a place of fear, or whether or not they're exploring their fears to see how they can break through and be more unleashed and be the great person that they can and should be on this planet, enriching the lives of others. Of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, do all those great things on the YouTubes. And yeah, we will see you next video. See y'all.